Hello, Scorpio soul. This is Selena Hart. Thank you for being here. I want to speak to the depth of what you've been sensing, because what's happening in this connection goes far beyond surface level attraction. This isn't a casual pull. It's magnetic. It's primal. And it's showing up in a way that neither of you can fully explain. The energy between you and this person is powerful. Almost too much for them to handle. It's not just that they're thinking about you, it's that they can't stop. Your presence lingers in their mind like a thread they keep trying to untangle. And the more they pull at it, the more wrapped up they become. No matter how far they try to drift, something keeps yanking them back mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually. There's a fire here. Scorpio, but it's not clean or quiet. It's messy. It's full of tension and contradiction. They feel drawn to you in a way that makes them feel both alive and out of control. It stirs something wild in their chest, a longing that borders on obsession, a craving that throws them off center. They're feeling the chaos of it. And because they don't know how to sit still with those emotions, they may have tried to avoid them, ignore them, or bury them under distraction. But it's not working. The more they resist it, the more the connection takes over. What you need to understand is that this kind of connection, this magnetic, consuming pull, isn't something they experience often. It's not logical. It's not convenient. And that terrifies them, because it forces them to confront parts of themselves they usually keep hidden. It exposes their vulnerability, their need, and the emotional walls they've built just to feel safe. And you, Scorpio, you don't play it safe. Your energy penetrates. You see through. And that's why they can't forget you. You don't just affect them, you awaken them. In the next part of this journey, we're going to explore what this intensity is teaching them. Because while they may be overwhelmed, the truth is, something inside them is shifting. They're not just being pulled toward you, they're being pulled toward a version of themselves they haven't dared to become yet. And you, unknowingly or not, are the catalyst for that transformation. Stay with me. Let's go deeper. And Scorpio, as we move deeper into their emotional landscape, it becomes clear that you've left a permanent imprint on this person's inner world. Their thoughts of you are not fleeting or casual. They're layered, intimate, and persistent. They find themselves slipping into daydreams where your presence feels so vivid. It's as if you've never left. In their mind, you're still there, still touching their life with that deep, transformative energy only a Scorpio can carry. There's a longing to return to that closeness. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, to feel seen by you again. Right now, the astrology reveals a subtle shift in their inner sky. The recent transits, especially Mars in a water sign, are stirring unresolved emotions, making it impossible for them to suppress what they feel. And what they feel is a quiet urgency to come back to you, but not recklessly. They're craving stability, not chaos. They want to move toward you with intention. They're thinking about what it means to rebuild something real with you, something that can hold up under the weight of truth, pain, and time. With Mercury triggering the emotional houses of their chart, they're preparing themselves for a conversation that matters. They know they can't approach you with vague words or half-formed feelings. Scorpio doesn't tolerate shallowness, so they're mentally rehearsing, thinking of what they'd say, how they'd say it, how to show you they're no longer hiding behind avoidance or pride. But here's the shadow. While their heart is pulling them toward reconciliation, there's a current of regret they haven't fully released, the kind that sits heavy in the chest. Not just regret for what they did, but for what they didn't do, for what they left unsaid, for the love they didn't fight for when it mattered most. Emotionally, this person is in a state of mourning, not necessarily of losing you, but of losing who they were when they had you. There's grief here, not just for the disconnection, but for the missed potential. The astrology supports this inner reckoning. Saturn's influence is pressing on their sense of accountability, forcing them to reflect on past behaviors and the consequences that followed. And Pluto, your ruling planet, is pushing them through a rebirth, one that demands truth, humility, and transformation. They are beginning to understand that this connection was never meant to be light or convenient. It was meant to evolve them. And now, they're being asked to rise to that calling. In the next part of this reading, we'll uncover how this inner awakening is guiding their next steps, because the truth is, Scorpio, they're no longer just thinking of you. They're beginning to realize they need to become someone who can truly meet you where you are. Scorpio, when we begin to peel back the layers of this connection, we encounter something deeper than mere miscommunication or temporary separation. There's a karmic undercurrent here, strong, undeniable, and purposeful. This isn't just about two people who drifted apart. This is about two souls whose connections stirred unresolved patterns, wounds, and contracts written long before either of you knew what this would become. You see, karmic connections aren't always gentle. They arrive to unravel the parts of us that cling to illusion. They force us to face the versions of ourselves we've outgrown but haven't yet released. And in this particular bond, both of you have triggered each other's deepest fears of abandonment, of not being enough, of losing control, of being truly seen. These aren't small fears. These are soul-level awakenings. And the astrology surrounding your chart shows that this relationship has been a mirror for that evolution. For this person, the karmic energy feels especially heavy. It's as though they've spent much of their life running from emotional truth, choosing convenience, distraction, or control rather than vulnerability. And perhaps, when they first connected with you, they weren't ready for what your energy revealed. Scorpio doesn't just love you penetrity. You expose what's hidden. And for someone not ready to confront their shadow, that kind of connection feels terrifying. So maybe they chose someone else. Maybe they returned to an old pattern, a nix, or a lifestyle that felt easier to manage. And yes, for some of you, there was a third party involved, not always a lover, but sometimes the ghost of their past, a wound, or even an addiction to detachment. Something or someone stood between you two. But what matters more now is this: they're starting to wake up to what that decision cost them. There is a reckoning happening in their heart. The emotional weight they tried to avoid is beginning to catch up to them. You can only outrun truth for so long before it begins to pull you under. And with recent planetary movements, especially involving Pluto and Saturn, it's as if life is gently, yet firmly, closing the escape routes. They can no longer pretend that what they felt with you was ordinary. They can no longer deny that they sabotaged something sacred out of fear. The karma here isn't about punishment, it's about evolution. They're being asked to take responsibility, not just for how they hurt you, but for how they betrayed their own heart in the process. And you, Scorpio, are not untouched by this either. This connection has also required you to examine your own patterns, your capacity to wait, to forgive, to let go of what you cannot control. There may have been moments where you held on to the potential of this person, hoping they'd rise, hoping they'd see you clearly. But even in the silence, even in the delay, you've been growing, you've been healing, and your soul knows that your worth was never tied to whether or not they chose you at the time. What matters now is that the energy is shifting. The lessons are being understood, and while they may have once chosen fear over truth, they are beginning to realize that fear has left them empty and that only truth will bring them home. In the next phase, we'll explore what this awakening is opening up for both of you, because karmic energy doesn't end with pain. It evolves into power, clarity, and sometimes a second chance that looks nothing like the first. Scorpio, there's a quiet revolution unfolding in this person's heart, one you may not see with your eyes. But you'll feel in the shifts of their energy, in the silence that no longer feels like avoidance, but like contemplation. They're healing, slowly, unevenly, imperfectly, but the process is real. This isn't the kind of healing that's easy to measure or explain. It's the kind that happens in the quiet moments late at night, when their thoughts drift back to what was lost, and more importantly, to who they were when they had you. The kind of healing that's born not from reading books or hearing advice, but from facing themselves over and over again, and finally being brave enough not to look away. Their intuition, once buried beneath logic, fear, and old habits, is beginning to rise like smoke from a long dormant fire. And that voice inside the one they spent years silencing is now calling them back to what felt real, rough, and right. That voice is calling them back to you. But here's the part you may not fully realize. Scorpio, you've been more than just a chapter in their life. You've been a turning point. Your energy has served as a mirror, a guide, even a catalyst for the parts of them that longed to grow but didn't know how. You didn't just challenge them, you inspired them. Through your depth, your clarity, your emotional honesty, you held a kind of standard they hadn't encountered before. And while they may have pulled away from it at first, perhaps even rejected it, something in them knew it was sacred. You weren't just a lover. You were the voice of something ancient and wise within their story. The person who didn't let them stay asleep. And in that way, Scorpio, you became their mentor, not in title, not in ego, but in essence. You showed them what it means to live with soul, to feel without flinching, to love without bargaining. And now, they're circling back, but not to repeat the past, not to rekindle something built on old wounds or unspoken fears. What they want is different now. The person they're becoming wants to meet you in a space of maturity, intention, and emotional clarity. They don't want to rush back in with the same patterns. They want meaning. They want something they can stand on. They want to be the kind of person who can offer not just passion, but presence, not just apology, but accountability. And while they may still be navigating their own doubts and insecurities, they are slowly gathering the courage to return, not as someone lost, but as someone who has been found. What comes next may not be simple. It may require more patience, more discernment, more truth. But one thing is certain, the version of them that's thinking of you now is no longer running from who they are. They're turning toward it, and in doing so, they're turning back toward you, not with fantasy or idealism, but with the quiet, steady heartbeat of someone who finally understands what love is supposed to feel like. The kind of love that doesn't just consume but builds, protects, and transforms. Scorpio, as we come to the closing threads of this journey, the message becomes clear. This person is no longer as lost as they once were. Yes, there is hesitation. Yes, there is uncertainty. But within that hesitation, there is movement, quiet, intentional, and growing stronger each day. They are beginning to set real intentions, not just wishful thoughts or emotional spirals, but actual, grounded desires to reconnect with you in a way that honors both of your growth. This isn't about rushing back or recreating what was. It's about acknowledging what still lives between you and exploring what could be if both hearts are ready to meet in truth. They miss you, but it's deeper than longing. It's reverence. They are starting to see you not through the lens of past wounds or projections, but through the clarity that comes after a period of soul searching. They're remembering the way you made them feel safe enough to unravel, challenged enough to evolve, and valued in a way that no one else could replicate. You weren't just important. You were transformative. And now, with everything they've been learning and unlearning. They're beginning to understand the gravity of what they almost lost and the quiet miracle of what still might be possible. This connection, Scorpio, was never random. It holds the blueprint for healing, for alchemy, for the kind of love that doesn't just soothe the surface, but rewires something at the core. But to access that potential, time is required, courage is required, and above all, forgiveness, not just of each other, but of the people you both were when the pain first took root. If you can meet each other again, not where the story paused, but from where the soul now stands, then something extraordinary can emerge. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. And real love, Scorpio, is always worth the wait.